let's move on to the economy. There's a lot going on in the world, not only of inflation, of grocery prices and all of that, but of course around the election, because how people feel about the economy is usually the single biggest determinant of how they will eventually end up voting and or not voting. So for President Biden, the economy remains a problem. What have they done for that? Have they instituted policies or spent a lot of time talking and thinking about it? No. Instead, there is a new, it seems, effort. Let's put this up there on the screen, actually reported by our friend Jeff Stein, where in response to a viral $16 McDonald's meal that is explaining voter anger at Biden, they say a White House official says the administration is now working with TikTok creators to tell positive stories of Biden's economic stewardship, while also working with the social media platforms to, quote, counter misinformation. And so anytime we see government working with social media platforms to counter misinformation, we of course have to ask, what is misinformation? And it brings me back to Ken Klippenstein's report about the Department of Misinformation within the DHS, where they would try and label in the same bucket of misinformation stuff about COVID having microchips with criticism of the Afghan withdrawal. And you're like, well, hold on a second here. One of those may be misinformation. The other one is a legitimate political critique. And having watched now the viral TikTok with you, Crystal, what does the guy say? He goes, can you believe this? Here's my receipt of McDonald's.
Right.
Here's a burger, a soda, and some fries that cost me $16. Where is the misinformation in that?
Right.
Nothing. And in fact, you know, I see these sometimes too, just because I guess this is where my mind goes, around like egg prices in the grocery store. That's not misinformation. And when people make reels or TikToks or whatever about them, it's because they feel, as I do, have you ever seen eggs that cost $10 before in your whole life? I just saw it yesterday. $10.92 is burned into my memory. They're pasture-raised eggs, to be fair. They're the most expensive whatever ones on the shelf.
Eggs.
But I'm skipping them. I'm like, no way. I'm not paying $11 for 12 eggs. That's almost $1 an egg. That's insane. I mean, the cheaper ones were like $4, I think, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. I mean, look, I understand that prices can go up, you know, over time, but we're talking about in a rapid period of 3 years, you saw year over year inflation come to like 40, 50, 60% in the case of some goods, especially whenever it comes to staples like beef, especially like beef, eggs, and then many other animal-based products, which for a variety of supply-based constraint reasons and inflation and all of that have just gone way up, combined with restaurant bills, which have skyrocketed from both the input costs going up and labor. So the point of all of this is to say, it's not misinformation, it's a real concern. And actually, just to show you what I guess they're trying to push back against, there was a TikTok that went very viral of a nurse who's living in Pennsylvania who described, I think, of what a lot of Americans are feeling currently at this moment, which is why it touched a lot of people. Here's what she had to say.
I feel like my husband and I are doing everything right. We both have good jobs. I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I work full-time. He works full-time. We just got paid this past Friday, right? We paid the mortgage. Bought some groceries, put some gas in the car. And guys, it is Tuesday, and we have like $200 or $300 to last us until next Friday. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm in school full time. I work full time. He works more than full time. He works overtime every week. This isn't how it's supposed to be. You know, growing up, we were told, you know, go to college, get a degree, work to support your family. Here we are. Did that. Now what?
I feel a lot of sympathy for her because, you know, let's think about some of the line items in this woman's budget. She's talking about mortgage. Now, she lives in Pennsylvania. It's not even a particularly expensive state, at least if you compare it to other people in the East Coast. I just looked it up. Gas there is $3.56 a gallon on average, which is quite high. It's on the higher end for the United States. Then, really, what did she mention? She mentioned her schooling. And I think why that hits a nerve is she probably works in one of the best industries that you can work in the United States. States. Nursing, there's a shortage of nurses right now. They get paid all kinds of money. And what she's talking about is, I'm going to assume on her part, her and her husband, a six-figure income, two working adults. And I think it just bears really out the entire two-income trap that Elizabeth Warren wrote about a long time ago, but of runaway inflation cost for housing, for schooling, and then food. And you put those three cores of society together and you get a breaking point of like what that woman felt like. And again, why it went off and took viral is I just think millions of people feel exactly the same. And it's not right. It's not like she doesn't look like a profligate spend. Look, we don't know her financial situation.
Right.
But if what she's saying is true and she's just, those are the major line items in there, I'm just gonna have to assume schooling is taking out a ton of that. And that's wrong. It's not supposed to be that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you put the current inflation aside, school, healthcare, housing,
and kids
have skyrocketed in costs. And those are like the basic bedrocks of feeling like you have a stable, potentially middle class life. And so, yeah, people are stretched incredibly thin. And even if she's lying and she's acting and this isn't true or whatever, even if this is technically fake news, you can just go and look at the statistics and know that there are millions and millions of Americans who are working two jobs, or a husband and a wife are both working and they're trying to raise the kids and they're trying to do everything right. And they're still barely making it paycheck to paycheck. And, to get back to Jeff Stein's piece about the $16 McDonald's meal and the White House effort to combat misinformation about the economy, et cetera, it really gets to this core debate of like, are Americans, what is the reality of the economy? Are Americans being influenced by social media to think it's really bad? Or is there something real here? And if you just look at the course of the Biden administration, and I've said this a million times, but let me just say it again. At the beginning, some relief gets passed for COVID. If you look at the statistics in terms of during the COVID period, when you had this much larger social safety net that was erected, and you had child tax credits going out, and you had direct checks going out, and you had beefed up unemployment insurance, et cetera, guess what? Those things really helped people. The student loan debt pause, those things really, really help people. And the story of the Biden administration has been deconstructing all of that social safety net. So is it any wonder then that people then look and say, I'm doing worse off now? Of course you are. Because all of the things that were helping you and that were bolstering your income and giving you a little bit extra in your savings account, all of those things are gone. And in addition, prices have gotten much higher. So to me, I'm like, it's no mystery. And I'm sure you can find things that are inaccurate that are being told online about the economy, et cetera. But there's a reason why people feel the way they do. And it's not because they're crazy or because they are brainwashed. And in fact, we have this piece that we can show you of some of the numbers here. Americans are getting very close to maxing out their credit cards. Because this is one of the mysteries is people say, oh, well, we know that they're really they're lying about the economy or they're fooled about the economy because they're still spending a lot of money. Well, perhaps this will help you solve the mystery. They're racking up a lot of debt to continue to spend that money. American borrowers are getting closer to maxing out. This is per the Wall Street Journal. They say all of this highlights that some American spending habits might not be sustainable, at least when it comes to their credit cards. Some people might be starting to consume more of their available credit from month to month, could hit the wall once those lines are exhausted. Recent note published by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston found that as of July, consumers with annual household incomes of less than $50K, whose accounts were delinquent, were on average utilizing 80 to 90% of their available credit. Of course, that leaves them with a tiny cushion, and across all cardholder income groups as of July, the ratio of outstanding card account balance to the account's credit limit was above February 2020 levels. So you have this indication that people are having to use more of their available credit and effectively max out their credit cards to be able to maintain what they have been doing over this time period.
Yes, exactly. And that just means more keeping up with the Joneses and then more feeling like that, paying the minimums and feeling perpetually like
well, it may not even be keeping up with the Joneses, just being able to keep up.
I think
keep the head above the water.
It's probably a mixture. Well, depending on the income strata that we're looking at here. If you're 100K and you're starting to use a lot more, although I'm assuming that a nurse and somebody else who's working more than full time is probably making somewhere in that range. Whenever you start to feel like that and the walls close in, that's whenever you make desperate decisions. And that's really whenever you can make life-changing financial decisions that will have a massive impact on you for decades to come. This is always my biggest beef with student debt. Most of these people have no idea what they're even signing up for. And many of their parents didn't experience the same cost, and so emotionally can't really understand what it means to have 25 years of debt hanging over you.
Well, and you're told like this is the way to do it.
Yes,
like this is
I
the
get it.
path to your, to you making it and being in the middle class.
I
and
don't
having
blame
a house,
anybody
whatever.
involved except for the government and the debt purveyor.
Yeah.
So it's like not the actual people taking it out. Although a lot of people do like to switch that. The overall lesson of this, though, is that when you're getting closer and closer to maxing out, is you eventually do face some sort of penalty. And so the way the Wall Street Journal posts this is like, oh, it could be good for retailers, because it's like, yeah, in the short term, but what about 6 months from now? What about a year from now? Like whenever you're maxed to the max, what are you gonna do? Maybe you're not gonna get any more credit. What about next holiday season? And look, I'm not naive. I know in America, eventually, things usually move around and full-blown collapse and all that stuff. But every piece that you look at a consumer level, the government is like, you're doing better off than ever. Everyone just yesterday was making fun of Americans for feeling bad because yesterday, Sunday, was the biggest travel day in the history of the United States, according to TSA. Well, it's as if they haven't heard of putting a flight on a credit card.
Right.
Just because, maybe they spend 3 years locked at home and you have a relative across the country. I actually met some people like this when I was in San Diego for Thanksgiving, and they were like, you know what, now's the time. And it's not necessarily because you have the money, it's because you've been separated from your relatives or your family, or you wanted to go do something for so long until you decide that now is the appropriate time. Money can be a constraint, but don't forget also about the trauma that I think a lot of Americans have been through over the last couple of years. So long way of saying it's not misinformation, White House, it's an actual economic problem.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right, we're subscriber funded, we're building something new, we want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.